Hi everyone, welcome to My Rising Rose, where we expand our consciousness to unite with the living cosmos and the beings like dragons and goddesses that dwell within those higher reaches of consciousness, while also remaining grounded and ordinary within our humanity. And today I want to channel Ishmeal, who is the crown chakra dragon of the Rising Rose, for you. But before I do, there's a few things that I wanted to speak about, and things that have been coming up for me and things that I've been contemplating. I have a good friend of mine who's been going through some significant spiritual shifts over the last year or so, which have been to do with like releasing attachment and identity. This is how I would describe it. He might use different words, but I would describe it something like this. Releasing attachment and identity, and then living a life that's free from the burden of control, like the attempt to control life. And I want to talk about this partly because through talking to him about it, I've been starting to release more of my own identity and control. You could say my ego. And that's an interesting thing, right? Because I think a lot of people don't really understand what that means, myself included. And I'm just kind of learning what it means. But I think for a lot of us, what letting go of control means like losing something. For me, I have this image in my mind of somebody who has let go of control, and it's usually, someone who's let go of their ego is someone who doesn't have very much. Someone who is, like a hermit living in a cave. They don't have very much physically. And I realized that after listening to him talk about the shift that he'd gone through, even though he was saying things like, you can't make something like this happen, you can't control it. And even though I know in many ways that you can't make that type of a spiritual shift happen, that it's the releasing of control. What happened when I listened to him was that I very rapidly created this ego idea that what I need to do is to make the shift that he's talking about happen. In other words, I need to control my mind and my body in such a way as to force it into the type of awakening that he's gone through, because I see that as something really desirable. Like it's something that I want to attain because I think it will give me status and achievement. I'm quite an achievement-oriented person. Like growing up, the main way that my mum gave affection to me and my siblings was when we had done well at school. Like she was a former teacher, and she wasn't that forthcoming with like emotional care, but one of the few times that we would receive that kind of feeling from her, if I'm remembering it rightly, maybe I'm misremembering this, I don't want to give her too hard of a time, but as I remember it, it was this way, that if I achieved well at school, then I would feel closer to her. I would feel more of a warmth from her and praise from her. So like achievement was this very important thing. And that's carried over for me into spirituality. So achieving some kind of spiritual state is kind of, there's a lot going on inside my psyche around that. And there's a lot of stuff around it, which creates quite a lot of confusion and the potential for a lot of misunderstandings of the kind of spiritual teachings that my friend was talking about. the spiritual realization that he's now living within. And what I'm slowly realizing, and this will link into the session that we're going to do today with Ishmeal, because he's the crown chakra dragon who is closely connected to this real letting go. But for me, I didn't realize, but I was thinking of letting go as a loss. I'm losing something. And then that makes me afraid of it. It's like I don't want to step into that. And parts of me are resisting it because I'm seeing it as something bad, and then I'm kind of trying to force myself to do something that my body actually feels quite uncomfortable with because of the way that I'm understanding this situation. But what I'm realizing is that the type of letting go or extinguishing that he's talking about, like he was using the word extinguish in one talk that he gave, which is actually like what the word nirvana means. The word nirvana, like often the word nirvana is associated with this very high spiritual achievement, right? Like the Buddha reached nirvana, and that was what made him the Buddha. This is my understanding. And I always thought nirvana meant some kind of bliss. It's like he reached some very blissful place. But actually the word nirvana means extinguish. And it just means that his sort of personal identity, which includes the need to control life, was extinguished, kind of disappeared. And instead he was left in a state of liberation, knowing that he doesn't know anything and knowing that he doesn't have to control anything. Like that whole mechanism just running its course and then just finally disappearing. So since this conversation with my friend, in these types of conversations, there's a lot of spiritual transmission. So really I feel like I was energetically receiving a lot from him. I kind of created this idea of what my next step was, which actually it was the complete opposite of what he was suggesting. It was like I decided I need to try and force myself to be something. And what I'm realizing over the past week or so is that I don't have to do that at all. I don't have to do that at all. Like, I don't have to try to modify who I am in any way. Like, I don't have to change anything about myself. That change will come naturally. It will just evolve. I will just evolve. But I don't have to make any of that happen. It will happen naturally. So I don't need to do anything. I'm completely free to be everything that I am. And it's funny because as I'm saying these words, they sound a lot like the kind of words that he was actually saying to me, but I just completely misinterpreted it. Like on one level I knew what he was saying, but on another, it's like that kind of grip of my ego was so tight. And then you may know this in your own life, like when that need to control or the need to change yourself kind of, it's like it colonizes spiritual ideas and concepts. It takes possession of them and then uses them to do the opposite often of what those spiritual teachings are about. So that it can, like with me in this situation, it's like what he was basically saying was absolutely everything that you are is completely okay and free and you don't have to do anything. In fact, the belief that you need to do anything is just like a delusion. It's not real. It's just not real. And it's a burden. You don't have to hold it. And it's a wonderful thing to let go of. He wasn't saying to me, oh, you must be a certain way or you must not be a certain way. He wasn't saying that at all. But that was how I took it. And I think this is where the importance of knowing our psychology, and our emotional state and our past experiences is really important in the spiritual journey, because when you're aware of the ways that you can warp reality because of what happened to you in the past, like for myself, didn't have a very good childhood, a lot of sense of lack, not being enough, all that kind of stuff, that's going to project itself onto a situation like this, as in like, okay, well, my friend now, he's the one who has the thing, the thing that I need. He's the one who is like worthy. He's the one who is good enough. And I need to change myself to become like him. And the ironic thing was that he wasn't actually saying that I needed to do that at all. He was saying the opposite. But my own distortion took over and made me feel very tense for a while. But thankfully, what's happening is that there's a shift coming through this where I'm starting to realize more what he was saying and let it sink into me, and it's a relief. It's like I don't have to do this. And it's interesting as well because one of the things that he was speaking about was like the kind of the letting go of these kind of supernatural experiences, which obviously I have these kinds of spirit experiences with the dragons that I channel. And he and some other people who had also gone through this process were talking about how that disappeared. And I was a bit like, oh, well, I kind of don't want that to disappear. That would make my working life quite strange. I'd have to make a lot of adjustments to the way that I work if I suddenly lose this connection to the dragons and the other beings. I think quite a lot of people would be disappointed if that happened. That would take quite a lot of work to figure out what to do next. But then I realized again that I'm just projecting my stuff onto him, and that he and others had said that isn't true for everybody. Like, that isn't what happens to everyone. And funnily enough, I was talking to the dragons and the goddesses that I'm connected with, and they were really helping me ground through this and be like, well, actually, you are your own person. You have your own trajectory of awakening, and it doesn't have to fit into what happened to somebody else. It's always going to be unique to you, and you don't really know what's going to happen. You're just worrying about something that might happen. Maybe you don't have to worry about that. And then it was through channeling Ishmeal recently in Dragon Medicine Group 1, which we began on Thursday. But places are available. You can still sign up for Dragon Medicine 1. And it's part of the reason why I'm doing this video, actually. I want to make more people aware of what we're doing specifically in Dragon Medicine 1, which is the first group that we started back in June, because we've just moved into the upper chakra dragons, which is Ishmeal, the crown chakra dragon, and then Gorkorath, the black chakra dragon, and then Hlian Deshan, the white chakra dragon. And I just want to make people aware of what's happening within this group, because, like with my role that I have as kind of the person who's kind of orchestrating these groups, I want to kind of make sure that we're getting a good number of people in each of these groups, and we've got a really good energy flow, and I feel like we could do with a few more people in group 1. I think the other groups are larger at the moment because we've got this kind of dynamic way of doing things where we open it up for people to come and go. And at the moment, group 2 and 3 are much larger than group 1. And I feel like it would be good to get some more people involved. So I wanted to take this opportunity both to share my story and also to invite more people in to experiencing what we're doing in group 1 at the moment. Because this crown chakra dragon is probably the one that I've connected with the least. And thankfully, he's coming in at just the right time, which I don't think is a coincidence, and really helping me accept my experience. So sometimes my mind has this habit, when I hear all these kind of spiritual evolution ideas, I get into this place where I'm like really trying to control and curate my own experience of life. Like I'm trying to micromanage my own awakening and my own personal development. And I'll channel him for you soon, but just to briefly share my kind of interpretation of what he does, it's like he's saying, you don't need to do that. And if you are doing that, that is completely okay. Like there's something almost natural about doing that. At this stage of our development, like that's okay. So it's not about fighting that. It's not about trying to control ourselves out of our addiction to control. It's more about just like accepting it. And that's what he began teaching us last week in group 1. And for me personally, it landed really deeply. As whenever the dragons are coming through, if you're familiar with the work that we do, whenever the dragons come through, it's not really the words that they're sharing that's important, it's the energy underneath. And his energy coming in has just been a real relief for me. So if that's something if you're resonating with what I'm saying, basically, if you're at this point where you're kind of noticing the things that I'm talking about, like you're noticing the way that you're micromanaging and trying to control your own journey of awakening, and it's stressful, always trying to get it right, beating yourself up if you feel like you're not doing it right. It doesn't have to be that way. And working with Ishmeal in the crown chakra dragon is one way to help this to change without trying to make it change, which is the kind of paradox. And it's funny, as I'm saying all these words, like I've read this 100 times from different people, so many different teachers saying the things that I'm saying right now, and me hearing what they're saying, and it's like, okay, that sounds interesting. But it's one of these classic things that happens along the way where we may hear some very profound teaching and think we understand it, but it's only years later when we really start to understand. Kind of understand in a sense which isn't like a kind of tight thinking that we know something, but just this sort of relaxed, open, that is the way things are. So, I'll channel Ishmeal for you now. I just briefly wanted to mention, obviously I'm wearing a suit now. I have a really good friend of mine who is a very well-dressed guy, and I've been really inspired by the way that he dresses, and he recently took me to buy this suit. So I'm kind of upping my style game at the moment, and that's relevant to this conversation because in some ways it really goes against the idea that I have about what a spiritual person is supposed to look like. Like the idea of letting go, like, oh, I'm not supposed to wear nice suits. But actually, letting go doesn't really have anything to do with what you look like or how you feel or anything like that. It's the freedom to be anything. It's the freedom to be anything. And then when you're in a state like that, you will naturally just go with the natural way that your body and mind wants to be. like in the way that you think, in the way that you feel, in the way that you act, in the way that you dress, like in all of those things. There's a natural way for your body, and a huge amount of the stress that we experience as human beings isn't about the conditions that we're in. It's about us trying to control and force the conditions of life to be something, because we're telling ourselves that it must or is supposed to be that way. When in reality, there's a natural way which our body and mind and personality and everything else will easily slink into without us having to go through all that stress. And for me, this is a part of my natural way, at least for the moment. And it goes against certain kind of spiritual ideas that I still hold. Even though I talk about this stuff like fairly regularly, I still hold this stuff inside me, and you probably do too. Some of you will be judging me for the things that I'm wearing and saying, well, a spiritual person can't look this way. A spiritual person can't have a nose ring or tattoos or wear a suit, because you have a certain vision of what a spiritual person must look like. But that's a delusion in your own mind. Like, there's no rules. There's no rules. Like, that's what I'm starting to realize. And it can kind of sink in, that recognition. Like, oh my God, there's no rules. Like, I'm free. And then you having your own version of this is going to look totally different, or it could look totally different to how it is for me. You know, I'm not suggesting that anybody imitate the way I'm expressing myself, as if that's the right way. I'm saying that whatever is your own natural way is your right way. And that's freedom. Like, when that goes really, really deep, that's freedom. So that's kind of the process that I'm in at the moment. I want to be somebody who continues to share about the active process that's happening in me, and not kind of try to fit into some image of what a spiritual person is supposed to look like, or try and act like something that I think that you and other people are going to resonate with. I just want to be me. And I hope that through doing that, you'll see that you are also free to be you. So, I'll channel Ishmeal for you now, crown chakra dragon of the rising rose. Kia nanayo. Ioneo nore. Ionalayo. Ionala. Ioneo. Kia nalayo. Ionalan. So I'm still just tuning myself in, but I can speak. I'm Ishmeal, violet crown chakra dragon at the rising rose. Take a moment to see if you can sense my energy as Jack's body rests in this energy, in this openness. I am a representative of the crown chakra of the cosmos, which you might think of as pure empty space, as total peace that resonates out through the totality of the cosmos. I am something like a gatekeeper of this place, a bit like one of those old school telephone operators. Do you remember those switchboard operators in when you, maybe 100 years ago or so, people would use the telephone and they would call the operator, and then the operator would put them through to the person that they're trying to reach. They had to go through a switchboard. I'm a bit like that for the crown chakra of your body. I unplug unnecessary switches and I plug in necessary switches to help you to connect and get to where you want to go. Jack was giving an interesting conversation, an interesting talk before I came in about his own personal journey of deluding himself, trying to control himself, trying to change who he is, trying to force himself to be something that he thinks is the right thing. Now he's gradually realizing he doesn't have to do that he can let go of that. That's a wonderful thing, and I'm going to continue to help him as he goes through this journey. And I want to extend that invitation to you. You also don't have to force yourself to be something to try and make yourself something. There is no right or wrong way to be. There is simply what you are. There is no beginning nor end. There is no point at which anything is known, that anything is understood. And therefore everything is free. Everything is free to be whatever it is in this vast ocean of unknowing. Jack's teacher, Fran Bennett, spent many years in the Christian mystical tradition. And there's a famous text written in, I believe, the 14th century by an unknown English mystic. And the book is called The Cloud of Unknowing. The Cloud of Unknowing. Through his conversation with his friend recently, Jack was exploring ideas of control and of knowing. You see, generally speaking, in your society, knowing is seen as a very good thing. It is seen as a way to be very intelligent or wise or powerful. If you know a lot, then you somehow have more than others. You are more intelligent, you are wiser, you are more. And there are vast industries that consume a huge amount of your collective energy that are dedicated to expanding their own knowing. Think of the intelligence agencies of the major nations of the world. They are all about knowing. Knowing, knowledge, this form of knowledge, intellectual knowing, is highly sought after by those who seek power over others. By those caught in the delusion that power over others, power over the world, power over oneself is the solution to suffering. When, of course, in reality, it is suffering's cause. Power is hell. The releasing of both power and powerlessness, the stepping out of that spiral where there are perpetrators and victims, stepping out of that cycle. That is heaven. That is liberation. Power and powerlessness may move through you in various ways, but they are not you. When this is known, you know that you know nothing. And then the burden of knowing is taken away from you. For some of you, my words will sound perplexing. How do I make myself know nothing? Why would I want to do that? Why should I believe these words? do not ask you to believe my words. I simply invite you to explore them on your own. You are allowed to be exactly as you are. There is nothing within you worthy of oppression. The oppression of the tyranny of your own need to control, to modify, to alter, to create. When this is let go of, creation happens through you. While your shoulders are unburdened of creation's pressure. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for being willing to relearn how to see, how to relate, how to know. You can return to these words whenever you need them. And more importantly, you can return to this energy whenever you need it. But for now,